Welcome to Men's Anonymous, the podcast where men can be vulnerable and open without fear of judgment. Your host, Daniel Weinberg, leads authentic and unfiltered discussions that explore the challenges and triumphs of modern manhood. Join us as we break down barriers, challenge stereotypes, and redefine masculinity. Men's Anonymous, a safe space for men to lower their shields and share their inner world without judgment.
Hi, welcome to the Movember series of Men's Anonymous. Movember is a global movement that runs each November to raise awareness and funds for men's health issues, specifically prostate cancer, testicular cancer, mental health, and suicide prevention. On this week's show, we've got the Undoctor. What if your diagnosis of mental health was never real? We speak to Dr. Fred on men's mental health, Men's Anonymous. Dr. Fred, so great to have you on the show.
Daniel, it is an honor and a pleasure and a privilege to be with you. So good morning. It's great to see you. Let's go.
Let's go. So, as you all know, I'm doing a Movember series. Movember focuses on all men's mental health and men's particular conditions such as prostate cancer, testicular cancer. But today, the reason why I really wanted to have Dr. Fred on the show, because Dr. Fred is the Undoctor doctor. He takes the approach to mental health a very different way to what I have been exposed to otherwise. And I thought it'd be super interesting to dig in and understand Undoctored Dr. Fred's journey on how he got to his protocol or his method in dealing with mental health in general, and in particular men's mental health. So why don't you kick off with, what does it mean, the Undoctored doctor?
Yeah, thank you. So I just call myself the Undoctor, not the Undoctored doctor, just to be specific. And you know what it means to be an undoctor, more or less, anyone can do it. You honestly don't need a license, and you don't need years and years of education to be an undoctor. You don't need to go to school. You don't need anything but who you are. You need your heart and your soul. You need a little bit of compassion, some understanding, and a willingness to harmonically and resonantly connect with another person. That's the whole idea of Undoctor. So we all know that when we go through the world just hoping, wishing, praying, like wanting someone or a group of people to understand us, to connect with us, to resonate with us, to get us. And when that happens, there's a tremendous explosion of healing that takes place in that very second. Now, the level of healing that happens when we connect far exceeds anything I've ever seen in medicine anywhere at all. And certainly far exceeds anything I've ever seen in the mental health field. So for men, it's especially interesting because men have so many barriers between themselves and connecting to other men. We have whatever we've been raised with, all the concerns that we have, our worries, our fears, our resentments, maybe our anxiety about being with other men and not trusting or not realizing that we have a man here who can be delicate, who can be kind, who can be compassionate, who can listen, who can be present. Most of us just fear this other kind of man, that somehow we're going to open up ourselves and we're going to be stomped on by some, brute or something and have our feelings hurt or have our heart broken. And then therefore we have taken on this idea that when dealing with or speaking to or trying to connect, if you will, to other men, there's only a limited number of topics that we can talk about. Sports we can talk about, music we can talk about, women we can talk about. But as far as our own selves, as far as what's happening internally or what's going on with our basic selves, coming to grips with our core concerns and then sharing them with another person, men tend to be untrained in that area. So it takes.
Why do you think that is? It sounds to me like reasons being, I'm just going to throw it out there, things like shame, the feeling of being perceived as weak or, not a strong, masculine, virile man, I mean, where do you think this comes from?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that early on, we've been given all these images of what a strong, masculine, virile man looks like, and crying or whining or complaining, or in fact, even getting in touch with that tender underbelly of ourselves is not highly encouraged early on. It's like toughen up, man up or stand up or, like pivot up. The idea being that we don't have access to our own tender feelings in a way of sharing them with others. Now, the truth is, we certainly have the tender feelings. All of us men have the tender feelings. We just don't have access to communicating them effectively. And it's not even a matter that we're not, we do what we can to sweep away the tender feelings so they can be on the front edge and be tough and be strong and be virile and don't cry and don't whine and don't be sad and don't be scared. All those things that we think is part of what we've been kind of trained through television, through media, through maybe our parents or our older sibling, what it means to be a man. And what it means to be a man is not to indulge ourselves with all of these tender experiences, but instead be tough and strong and roaring and growling and farting and all those things that are sort of man-like. And we just have not been programmed in that direction. So our default is to not share with other men other than those, kind of circumscribed topics like sports and, drugs and alcohol, and then women and music. Those are some of the topics that you can be pretty sure the average so-called man would be willing to inter-exchange with you. But as far as your concerns, your feelings, your worries, your resentment, your discomfort, your tenderness, that takes a little bit more courage to want to share that with another man, because I think we've been programmed to be fearful that we're going to be stomped on or smothered when we say or when we speak our truth about our tender self. What the Undoctor does is really recognize that, seeing that if you're having trouble communicating with someone, that's not your fault. If you're having trouble, negotiating and navigating this crazy world of yours, that's not your fault too. Jiddu Krishnamurti, he had said, it is no sign of mental health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. And that's what we're talking about here. We don't blame a log for burning in the fire, because that's what logs do in a fire. But we give ourselves heat for burning inside of the culture that we're living in. And we don't realize that the culture itself is nearly impossible, if not impossible entirely, to negotiate effectively. So we don't give ourselves the opportunity to see that, we're all bumbling, we're all stumbling, we're all tumbling through life. And none of us know what it means, how to live life adequately. There's no recipe book. There's no template, there's no owner's manual to this. So we go through life and we get kicked around pretty hard inside of our being. And it's hard. It's challenging. There's a lot of obstacles to being alive. And, we as men somehow have a little cork in the bottle about willingness to share our underlying concerns, including concerns of being hurt, or worries, regrets, resentments, etc.
Now, the repercussions of which having that cork in the bottle, leads to, I guess, a lot of these men's mental health issues that we see, where they, that we see things like suicide rates going up, depressed morbidness, etc. Now, you have a very strong position on the diagnoses of mental health on the spectrum, ADHD, bipolar. Why don't you talk us through what you almost completely dismiss so why controversial. So I'd like you to try and help us understand your position on and where that comes from.
Yeah. So, in 2006, that was halfway, about 15 years after becoming a psychiatrist. I've been a psychiatrist for about 36 years. So in 2006, I did something kind of radical. I was really sick and tired of getting people diagnoses and giving them medications, because I feel like both of those are traumatic and damaging in their own right. Once we start feeling like we have a diagnosis, we're basically agreeing that we're afflicted, we're affected, we're defective, we're different, we're ill, we're somehow deficient, and we have a syndrome, something like this. And that causes a lot of difficulty. And same thing with medications. I haven't seen medications do what they're marketed to do, for the most part. Now, before we go too far, let's speak to the listeners in your crowd who are really happy with their therapy and with their treatment plan and with their medications, and they wouldn't trade it for the world. And to all of them, I just say, oh, by all means, please keep doing what you're doing. If you've reached a space where you wouldn't trade something for the world in your life, like, good for you. I mean, that's amazing that this life doesn't often offer that experience. So if you have that going on, I'm not suggesting that medicines are wrong for you or that your therapy or treatment plan, it doesn't fit you. But this is really a conversation for the hundreds of millions of people who don't have that experience going on, who are feeling undiagnosed, underdiagnosed, untreated, overtreated, mistreated, undermedicated, overmedicated, mismedicated, et cetera, and want to understand what's going on. So the medications have always been an issue for me. I wasn't sure that they were doing what they were. I was pretty sure they weren't doing, in fact, what they were marketed to do. So in 2006, I had a couple thousand outpatients in my practice, and I began to take a few of them, many of them, off their medications with their consent. And I took them entirely off the medications that they had been on for months and many times years. And they got better, all of them. Like, they got reliably and profoundly better, like predictably better. And in most cases, their diagnosis actually disappeared in that process. Like, they no longer had what they thought they had that they were thinking they needed medicine for. So their diagnosis dissolved. And this was an indicator, of course, that the medications weren't doing what they were counted on to be doing. And in fact, they may have been inducing, increasing, or perpetuating, or even causing the symptoms they were marketed to treat. And this was a problem for me. So once I started getting people off medicine, I wanted to scream that from the mountaintops, like, hey, I took people off medicine and they got better. I wanted to tell everyone. And it was like I had like a violent impulse to go to the top of the mountain and just, shake everybody, like, stop doing this because we're making people worse. But that doesn't work to be violent. It doesn't work to scream to have a rant from the mountaintop. So people weren't really listening to what it was I had to say. So I had to chill a little bit and see.
What about peers, like psychiatrists within the industry that are your peers? When you would, broach this subject or let's say.
They know I'm right. They know I'm right. I don't get very much pushback. Yeah, they know I'm right. They wouldn't take the medicine on a bet.
Isn't that interesting?
They wouldn't dare take a medicine. They wouldn't dare take the medicine that they prescribe. They know better. They know that it causes lots of problems. So yeah, if they just want to be open and interested and honest about it, of course they know that. They know the stuff is powerful and that it causes many issues, and they wouldn't take it on a bet. They wouldn't give it to their children. No, that isn't how it works. This is what we've been taught by the companies and by the industry and by school and even by the insurance companies. We hear what we hear. Now, the problem is the medications are not the problem. And the diagnoses is also not the problem. And the industry, big pharma, that's not the problem. And doctors, they're not the problem. Insurance companies, that's not the problem. Authorizations, pharmacies, that's not the problem. None of those things are the problem. See, the problem, as I backed off and tried to find a calm way to introduce this to the public, the problem is that people don't come to a psychiatrist to find out if there's something wrong with them. They come to a psychiatrist to find out what's wrong with them. They have already determined in no uncertain terms that there's something wrong with them by this time they show up at my door. And once you show up knowing there's something wrong with you, you're only coming for confirmation.
You're looking for confirmation and a solution. Tell me what to do with my problem.
Not even a solution, because these people really don't expect a solution, because we all know these medicines don't cause a solution. Even the medicines don't actually promote themselves or market themselves as a solution to a problem. At the very best,
what are the medications?
At the very best, they're marketed as containers or slowing down the deterioration that's inevitable. When we are diagnosed with a psychiatric condition, we don't think it's going to go away. We think that we now have it, and now we have a greater propensity for relapses, for instance. We think we have a condition and now we're saddled with it. And because we had it once, we're going to have a big greater chance of going down that same rabbit hole. What if none of that is true unless we call it true? In other words, what if it's just a passing phase in reality and it doesn't represent a diagnosis? So in other words, psychiatry is the only field that I know of in all of medicine where if someone comes to my office for an initial evaluation and I let them know that I think they're good, that they're okay, they get pissed. They don't want to hear that they're okay. In fact, when they say that they're okay, they say things like, well, why would I come to see you to hear that? And it's like most doctors, you go to an oncologist. If an oncologist tells you you're okay, you're pretty excited. A cardiologist tells you, if cardiologist tells you're okay, you're like down. If you're, speaking of the cancers you talked about, if, an orthopedic surgeon tells you're okay, you're like, cool. If a psychiatrist tells you're okay, you're like, quack, I'm going next door. I'm going to go find me a doctor who knows there's something wrong with me.
Why is that?
I think the primary reason for that, again, without being derogatory, I think the primary reason for that is we all have an interest in relinquishing the responsibility for the parts of our life that aren't going as well as we wish. So we all do that. In fact, I've already made several mistakes today. It's only early in the morning, as you know. And if I could blame you for any of those mistakes, I would do it in a second, bro. I mean, it's your fault that I did all. If I didn't have this darn podcast, I wouldn't have had to hurry and trip over myself and spill my tea. It's like, so it's your deal, So what we do is we relinquish the responsibility for the parts of our lives that are not going as well as we wished, or you're clumsy, or we're sad, or we're maybe resentful or regretful, or blame and shame, like you talked about before, or feel guilty. And when we get saddled with a diagnosis that we then agree to take on into the world, like ADHD or PTSD or social phobia or anxiety or major depression or bipolar disorder or autistic spectrum disorder, when we start getting those kind of alphabet soup diagnoses, we can sort of say something like, well, that's not me, that's my condition. That's not me, that's my ADD. That's not me, that's my PTSD. That's not me, that's my ASD. That's my BPD. That's my BAD. That's my schizoaffective disorder. That's my GAD. That's my MDD. And so we get that we have, in some ways, a place to go to explain the areas in life where we're not performing at highest level.
Let me ask you there. Do those conditions exist though? Like, isn't
I don't think so. Not they obviously exist. And listen to what I'm saying. They obviously exist because we're talking about them. So they exist. They're a reality. Because people treat them as if they exist, then they exist. But it's all, the only reason they exist is because someone has given them a label and other people have agreed to follow that label. What if none of us actually have an inherent condition? Look, you have one condition, Daniel. I actually have been watching you during this whole talk, and I am confirmed that you have one condition. You do.
What's my condition? Alive?
You ready?
Yeah, alive.
Well, you're getting close.
Happy?
Your condition is Daniel Weinberg.
Oh, yeah, okay. It is.
That's all you've been. That's all you've been, and that's all you are, and that's all you're going to be, and you're Daniel Weinberg, and that's your condition. You don't have something called major depression. You don't have something called generalized anxiety disorder until someone tells you do and you agree to take it on. Now you have it. So let's talk a little bit about like this, an analogy I like to use. Let's say you came into my office and you're like, Doc, I got some things going on I'd like to understand. I got, my skin is gray. My nose is too big. I drink too much water. I eat too much peanuts, and I'm a mess in a china shop. And I'm like, I start looking in my book. I'm like, oh, I got it. I got your diagnosis. You're like, oh, that's so exciting. You're the best. Tell me what it is. I'm like, oh, you're an elephant. And you're like, cool. That explains everything. I'm so excited. I'm an elephant. Yay. No wonder I can't hang out in a china shop. No wonder I drink so much water. No wonder I'm addicted to peanuts. When you walk out of my office, now sure that you have a diagnosis, I'm very excited that we have an explanation for all these weird sort of qualities that you have. When you walk out, guess what? You're looking for a circus. You're looking for chains. You're looking for elephant kind of stuff all of a sudden. And your diagnosis is real to you. In fact, you bring it home and you tell your family, hey, I talked to this great doc today and he told me what was wrong with me. I'm an elephant. And your brother says, you're not an elephant. You feel bad for him. You feel bad for your brother because he just doesn't know. A doctor already gave you that diagnosis. He just doesn't know. He's uninformed, underinformed. And so he should be more informed. Want to know why? Because he's your brother and he might have genetic qualities that have him being at risk of being an elephant too. So you start worrying about him that maybe he's going to miss the diagnosis that he should have about, because you've seen him be a mess in a china shop too. So you're like, okay, well, you feel bad for him, or maybe you just feel like he's just wrong or he doesn't know yet. But you walk around and then, and you're pretty sure now that you walk around like you think an elephant should walk around. And the world starts treating you like a man who thinks he's an elephant. That's how the world treats you. Why? Because that's what you've described yourself as. And once you're carrying that diagnosis, then you come back to the doctor, let's say in a couple of weeks, and you're like, oh yeah, I found out a couple of things. I've got a couple other conditions. Is it associated? You say, I have big ears, really big ears, and I have a great memory. And you're like, does that add on? And I'm like, yeah, you got elephant type 2. It's a very rare condition. Like you're a little bit different. You got a special case. You're like, yes, I'm a special case now. I don't just have elephant. I got elephant type 2. And that's exciting. And that explains my whole life. And now when I look at elephants inside of the encyclopedia or something, I'm pretty sure I'm one of them. Now, the truth is, psychiatric diagnoses usually get developed after the treatment itself gets developed. The medication gets developed, and then the diagnosis develops shortly thereafter to deal with that medication. See, because the medications are not designed to actually cure anything. They don't even market or promote themselves to do that. They're designed to squelch some particular feelings, perhaps for a short period of time, and then increase, induce, perpetuate, create, or sometimes actually cause the symptoms they're marketed to treat. Now, when we start looking at that, that's what the medications do. We start looking at the damaging effects of thinking there's something wrong with us, when maybe we're not, maybe there's nothing wrong with us at all. Maybe like a log burning in a fire, we're having trouble and we're clumsy and we're confused about how to deal with the onslaught of stimulation that we get every single second in this world. And we don't know how to do it. And we're clumsy and we're tripping over ourselves and we're saying things we didn't really want to, and we're mean sometimes, or we get thoughts of hopelessness or helplessness or terror or anxiety. It's very easy to pick up a seemingly psychiatric set of symptoms. For instance, Daniel, if me and you decided to go on a project here and come up with 100 reasons why we should be depressed, how long would it take us? Maybe like 4 minutes between the two of us.
Not long.
Okay, how about anxiety? About 4 minutes.
Yeah, same.
How about terrified?
Yeah.
Maybe 3 minutes.
Yeah, easy.
How about hopeless?
You can come up with all these things.
Easy. Look, there's no shortage of reasons to be uncomfortable in this world.
So explain to me, I'm 51 now, okay?
Yeah.
And I mean, this is just what it feels like to me, but it feels like to me in the last, let's call it, I'm going to be generous, last 20 years, I feel like the proliferation of all this is just, there are so many different types of diagnoses. There are so many types of conditions. There's so many more people that you hear about that have these.
They've been told they have them.
They claim to have these. And how did this happen?
I think we're just looking at, this idea. The real paradigm shift happened in 1987. So prior to 1987 didn't look like this very much. And, it looked different. It was like the psychiatrists and mental health workers were actually designed to speak to somebody and get to what's going on in their real world and maybe connect with them. But it isn't like psychiatry was that much better then. So I don't want to shine a light like that. I just want to say that was the purpose of psychiatry until 1987. By the time I decided I want to be a psychiatrist, that's what the world looked like in front of me. At that time, that's what I thought I was going to be taught how to do, communicate and connect with other people. But in 1987, there was this massive shift that took place. And that was with the inception and the introduction of Prozac. And Prozac started in 1987. That green and white capsule changed the world drastically. So that most people don't recall or aren't old enough or don't know that Prozac was on the cover of Newsweek all by itself, just a picture of the pill. That's it. And, it said in that article, it talked about how it might be the panacea for all human concern. The idea was that they might even put it into the water system in Los Angeles and New York. And they were hoping that, this would be the thing that people would take. So all of a sudden, psychiatry, which isn't true, none of that is true, of course. I mean, we haven't seen the world become tremendously mentally healthier. As far as I can tell, I haven't noticed the world becoming healthier.
I think on the contrary, I think it's gone the other way.
Yeah, right. And so it's possible, in fact, that these psychiatric medicines are in some ways a culprit in our mental health getting worse, because there's so many people who have decided to take medications, and maybe these medications actually make you worse. And that's the whole thing. Now, if they do make you worse, they make you worse because you have a diagnosis, and the medicines were given to you because you have a diagnosis, because you took on a diagnosis. That's why you have to have a diagnosis in order to prescribe a medicine. So you have a diagnosis. And again, just on that point, people don't realize that every single time you go to a psychiatrist, you get a diagnosis. There's zero chance of you walking out of a psychiatrist's office without a diagnosis. Most people, and it's never going to go away. So now it's in your chart and it's there forever. Not that you should be afraid of that, but it has an impact. You see, we don't get paid unless we give you a diagnosis. If we say that we saw you and you didn't have a diagnosis, then the insurance company won't pay us. So 100% of the time, even on your first visit, you walk away and your doctor doesn't have to tell you, but he put a diagnosis, a psychiatric diagnosis into your chart. I'm quite sure, that he wouldn't get paid otherwise. So when we start, again, looking at, the diagnostic aspects of this, we start realizing that if we take on our diagnosis, if we become our diagnosis, then it's because we thought something was wrong with us. But we're back to that same space. What if, even though you're uncomfortable, and even though you're tripping, and even though there's, tripping over yourself, and bumbling and stumbling as a man in this crazy world, like a man with other women, or a man with children, or a man with ourselves, or even a man with men, where there's a significant amount of internal strife and pain, just in walking through the world, we start really seeing that maybe all of those experiences, uncomfortable as they are, just represent normalness inside of the human condition. See, when we call ourselves defective, even if we have this new equation that Prozac put forth with the whole notion of biological psychiatry and chemical imbalance theory suggests that there's something uncomfortable in your world. It's because you're chemically unbalanced. But we already know that life is extremely uncomfortable. We look at Buddha. He sat underneath that tree for a number of days, and then he figured out a lot of things from under that tree. We still watch that and follow it and read it and listen and share it. We really appreciate Buddha. Well, one of the things that Buddha did is he got up from his tree when he was done. He decided, okay, time to go out there and bring my stuff. And one of the things he was unable to resolve was the idea that life is suffering. He walked away, and that's one of the tenets of Buddhism, is that life is suffering. He did not resolve that. It's here, dude. It's here for real. It's been here the whole time. It's going to be there the whole time. It's okay to suffer. Again, I'm not wishing suffering, and I'm not telling you, hey, get up off your bootstraps and, just like,
you're just saying the reality is that when you walk through life, it's not all rainbows and fairies. That it's
not at all.
There is very difficult times, average times, good times, great times. There's a whole rainbow of experiences you're going to have, and it's not all great. And so just because it's not great doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. That's
100%.
That's what I'm
said
hearing.
It better. Exactly right. That does not, and that's all I'm asking you and everyone. So that's the Undoctor approach. There's nothing wrong with you, but we have things that can lead to greater comfort, or lead to greater steadiness, or lead to greater alignment, lead to greater stability and optimization. We do have some things that can do that, and things not to do. So be careful what you take into your system. Be careful what you watch. Be careful what you listen to. Be careful what you eat and taste. Be careful who you're with, because those things really do affect the mood or the context of how you're living life. So we can show you what not to do, like be careful what you eat, like for real, be careful what you're drinking. What about gratitude? Are you showing gratitude to what your life every morning? Are you waking up and listing 10 things that you're grateful for? I find that to be so effective. Are you getting outdoors enough?
This is great. So let's go through, because what I'm starting to hear is you have a particular approach or protocol in introducing the patients you want to unpatient, let's say. Okay, so you just started mentioning a few things there. So for listeners, what are some of the easy things that they can do and walk away from listening to you, right, today? There are things that they can do that can improve their mental health and well-being in general. So you mentioned, the first thing you mentioned is obviously diet. Having a healthy diet, I guess, is on the list.
Yeah, eating real foods is a good idea. Eating stuff that can't be metabolized, eating stuff that was made in a laboratory and has nothing at all from nature in it, you might want to double check that one at the door. But eating, the better, the more real, the more organic, the more earthly, the more clean your food is, it's the better off you're going to be. And, and that can be, I'm not saying that you need to eat vegetables and fruit only, or seeds and nuts only, or, I'm not even saying that you need to eat meat and eggs only. You just eat whatever you eat. But if it's really clean, and then you monitor yourself and hold yourself to your own values, like, why are you eating in the first place? Are you eating as a function of your psychiatric concerns, of your psychological concerns? Are you eating out of boredom or loneliness? And if you do that, you can check that at the door too, because eating is a sacred act to keep this body alive, to keep this body going. It's a sustainable act. And so what we eat and what we drink is really critical. That, of course, when we put something into our body, it truly does become us. So it's pretty important. If we're going to eat a breakfast of Cheetos, what we're going to have to understand that that's going to have an impact. And many of us, we had pizza last night. There's a couple of pizzas in the morning, a couple of pieces left in the morning. They're cold. Boom, boom, boom. I love cold pizza in the morning. I think most dudes do. I love cold pizza in the morning, dude. If I order a pizza and there's a couple pieces left when I wake up, I'm all over that stuff. But, is that, and it might not even be bad for me in that situation. Pizza is, it's probably in the middle of the road as far as at least food that is edible and not too damaging. But we start really seeing it's not just our diet, it's our gratitude, it's our relationship with nature, it's our meditation. Are we sitting still and silent every day so that we can gather our wits about us and start realizing that we are not our feelings, we're not our emotions, we're not our sensations, we're not our circumstance. You can get that only through meditation, as far as I can tell. By sitting still, sitting open, finding our mantra, holding ourselves up, and just sitting quietly and exploring and watching our thoughts, feelings, and emotions go by, letting them go by and coming back to center. Meditation offers some incredible points of view, incredible viewpoints from which to see the world and start seeing that we are not those things. We have those things, but they're not who we are. And so meditation is a great one. And then, starting another one is creativity, art, music, dancing, singing, drama, cooking, writing, gardening, these kind of things where even 1 minute a day doing those things can be remarkably uplifting. And then the other space that is good is self-pampering. Are we taking care of ourselves? Are we getting that hot bath, hot bubble bath? Are we taking those nice sweet walks? Are we getting ourselves massages? Are we getting ourselves foot rubs? Are we, doing and being with ourselves as if we are the VIP royalty that we really are in our life? Are we being kind to ourselves? And being kind and compassionate is also part of the package, as is, being involved or creating relationships with other people. So having authentic conversations with other people from the core of ourselves, sharing things with other people in a way that is very authentic and very genuine. And that's also part of the Moss method. The Moss method is 20 things that I've compiled that actually work to give people increased comfort. I don't really mean to nitpick here, but it's important. When you said better mental health, it's not better mental health. It's more comfortable, perhaps. It's a little bit less uncomfortable, but there's not a better mental health. The idea is even when you're in loads of pain and wishing that it would end, that doesn't mean you're in poor mental health. That just means you're having an extremely uncomfortable experience right now. And we've already been through the idea that there's countless reasons to be uncomfortable in the world. I'm shocked that I'm somehow able to contain myself with all the shit that we have to deal with every single day, that I'm somehow able to contain myself and have a reasonable conversation with you even right now is stunning to me, dude. It's stunning. There are so many reasons to be completely messed up. Completely.
It really is. I think the world is getting more and more fucked up, to be honest. So
dude, it's infinite. There's like an infinite number of reasons. Yeah.
It makes sense to me that there are a lot more people out there having a tough time and a tough time.
Yeah, of course they are. And there's nothing wrong with that. We don't blame a log for burning in the fire.
Yeah. Now,
go ahead.
No, you keep going, because you also mentioned there, you have a routine of like writing 10 things that you're grateful for. What, you do that in the morning when you wake up, or?
I actually say it out loud. I put my hand on my heart and I say 10 things. I say my morning prayer. I have a morning private prayer that I say first thing in the morning. And then the next thing I do is I put my hand or both hands on my heart and I say out loud 10 things that I'm grateful for.
And it can be anything. It can be
anything, for sure. So yeah, I'm lying next to my wife, so I always say her name first because she's here with me. So, I say Alexandra, and then I go, maybe my cats. I have these 3 amazing cats that teach me how to live. They pretty much taught me everything I'm saying here in some ways. Cats know how to get this stuff done. Like I have 3 great cats who seem like they get it at a level that I'm envious of. And, they teach me. They're my homeschoolers. And so they're number 2, 3, and 4, or sometimes in a group, they're number 2. Then I might go to the sun and the moon, and then I might go to my food, I might go to my friend, my mentor, might go to podcasting, might go to the internet, might go to technology, might go to my car or the health or my parents or my siblings, any of those. It's not hard to come up with 10 things pretty quickly. And then, I've now started off my day looking at the things that are going well instead of falling down the rabbit holes that are always here. Always here. I can always jump down an endless rabbit hole to hell. Always can jump down an endless rabbit hole to hell. I can definitely do that. And so can you. And so can they. And if I do that and I choose to stay in that space, and then I go to a doctor and I tell them, look, life is hopeless. Then here I go. Now I got my diagnosis. Now I got a medication. Now I'm going to get worse over time. And I'm going to think that it's me getting worse rather than the medicine's actually causing me to get worse. And I'm going to continue to take medicine because doctors are not trained to discontinue medicine. Doctors are only trained to add, increase, or change your medicine. So if you come in and you started some medicines and you're like, really common second visit complaint is, doctor, the medicines actually help, but I'm worse. It's like, how could that be? What are you talking about? Well, it helped for a short period of time. And now I think my symptoms are back and they're even a little bit worse. What people don't realize is that's exactly what you should expect by the second visit, because that's what the way the medicines work. They actually do progressively make you worse while giving you an initial hint that maybe they're hiding or getting rid of the untoward symptom in the first place. So instead of antidepressants getting rid of depression, what they do is get rid of all emotion, including depression. So if we keep our focus...
They make it numb, basically.
What's that? No, I wish that it was numb. I wish if it was numb, it wouldn't mean it was getting worse. If all they did was numb it, that would be fine.
So what is it doing? What is it doing?
It's adding to it. It's increasing chemically your tendency to become depressed. So in fact, it's messing with the receptor sites in such a way that the medicines are causing the symptoms they're marketed to treat. Now, the truth is, it's not the medication's fault. You can't blame medicines. Medicines are a thing. They're not a lot. I tried to call medicines the other day and I couldn't find them in the phone book.
Didn't answer.
And then I tried to call Big Pharma to blame them. No phone number. It's because these things that don't really exist. They're made up stories. The reason we're taking medicine has nothing to do with the fact that a doctor ordered it for us. The reason we take medicine is because we choose to take medicine. When we start realizing that with our own sovereignty, we're the ones putting medicine into our mouth every single day. Yeah, but the doctor told me to. So what? It doesn't mean every morning the doctor's not forcing. If you don't want to take medicine, then you don't have to.
No, I understand, but there's a certain, like when you're the individual that's having the tough time, and there is a domain expert that you go to out of you're the doctor, you know what to do.
That's bullshit. That's the whole point.
You're going to tend to listen to the expert, but I can understand why people do.
That's the whole point. That's the whole illusion that somehow I know better about you than you. I don't think so. It doesn't matter how much education I have. I don't know better about you than you. It doesn't matter if I'm Sigmund freaking Freud. It doesn't matter if I'm Jung. It doesn't matter if I'm the Wizard of Oz. I don't know more about you than you do. And there's no way that you can tell me that I do. However, like you just said, we relinquish responsibility. We're going to go to an authority who's going to tell me how I work.
That's right.
And then I give you medicine, which are designed literally to give you the diagnosis that it's marketed to treat. Now, when that medicine hits your system, because you're choosing to take it, you're thinking you're following orders and you're being a good patient. But in fact, what you're doing, it's like a razor blade inside of a Band-Aid. See, a Band-Aid might numb it, but a razor blade inside of a Band-Aid would make the condition worse. You understand? It would block the bleeding for a short period of time, and then blood would start oozing out the side of the bandage.
Need more.
And when you come to the doctor and you have that going on, and the doctor and you both agree that your condition must have gotten worse, certainly not that the Band-Aid that caused it. Let's get it. It's just a freaking Band-Aid. But if we're unaware of the razor blade that's embedded in it, then we're going to think that the condition got worse. And when the condition gets worse, it would be absurd for the doctor to actually decide not to put a Band-Aid on it ever again, because they don't realize, and neither do you, that the Band-Aid are actually perpetuating the condition, right? So the fact that a Band-Aid, or the idea that a Band-Aid causes a worsening oozing only leaves the doctor three options: add another Band-Aid, increase the size of the Band-Aid, or change to a different type of Band-Aid. That's all we have. We don't have remove the Band-Aid because it's causing damage. We're not taught that way. We're taught to slip around. We as patients and as clinicians are not. If you come into my office worse on the second session, stopping your treatment altogether doesn't seem like a sound idea, except there's only one condition where it would be a sound idea, and that would be when the condition is that the treatment is causing worsening of the symptom. That is exactly what I'm suggesting is going on. And the whole thing is based on one important feature that we've already been through a couple times. If you or the patient, the client, the customer, the recipient of my oh so special care thinks that there's something wrong with them. You see, if we got to the point where we really began to deal with each other like there's nothing wrong with that other person, they just got to be who they got to be because they got to, even if they're doing stupid stuff or mean stuff or bad stuff, these are just people who are doing what they think is the next right thing given the life that they've had. It starts being a little bit tricky, of course, because there are really, there are bad people out there. There are people who are doing bad things. And I'm not suggesting that get over it. They're just doing what's right for them. Although when we start conversations with the idea that we are lateral, two human beings negotiating the world separately and together, then we create a grounded tendency toward mutual respect. And I going back to what this conversation is really about, that's what men need. Men need to be able to look at each other and see that we've had our own wounds, we've had our own traumas, we've had our own experiences, we have our own fears. We have our own heartbreak. We have our own wishes, dreams, desires. We have our shadows. We have our lust. We have our impulses. We have all these things going on. That's part of being men. But in order to get that with each other, my deep suggestion is to see each other not as one person having less than you or more than you, but having someone eye to eye in a lateral way, like they too might have nothing wrong with them any worse than you do. And maybe there's nothing wrong with you, nothing wrong with them, and nothing wrong with her. And maybe it's just going the way it's going, and that life is what it is. And diagnoses in and of itself actually perpetuate their own existence.
Do you facilitate men's groups as well, or what's the work that you do with regards to trying to encourage men, as you described earlier in the conversation, to really connect, to open up, to share the proverbial cork out of the bottle and just allow it to flow? So
Yeah, I love working with men. I love being in my own men's group. I'm not a leader of a men's group right now, but it isn't about being a leader. If I was a leader, all I would do is, and I've been leaders periodically, all I would do is open the space for men to realize that this is just a group of men and no one is bigger or better than the other. These are just men working at what it means to be a man in a very difficult time to be a man, by the way. I love mankind.
Why do you say that? Why do you say that?
Because, the whole self-image and the image of society about the toxic masculine, or about, dumbing ourselves down or feminizing ourselves, or, like making ourselves lose our teeth and lose our fierceness and lose maybe our aggression and lose our assertiveness. It's difficult to show up as a man in this field because there's so many disempowering and impactful, intrusive things going on in the world, in what we eat, in how we're seen, and how we're written about, how we're seen by women. Though, and there's also men out there who are scorching the name of what it means to be a man. There's men, when men are doing damaging things, we then all have to face what they did and, own it as a brotherhood. It's very difficult. We don't, there's high expectations of what sort of non-toxic man can be, or what a snag is, or what are some ways of being a man that make any sense, rather than just rolling out with what's really so. So I don't need to know what it's like. I don't need someone to tell me, theoretically, I don't need to tell someone to tell me what standards I have to meet to be a man. How about if I'm just myself? If I'm just myself, I guarantee that's being a man. That's it. There it is. I don't need like some standards like I should open the door for people, or I should wash my car every day, or I should make dinner 3 times a week. That's not those type of menu items. Instructions are not required. The way to be a man is to simply be yourself, and guaranteed you'll be a man.
Well put, Dr. Fred. Thank you so much for your insights and your outlook on what it means to be a man and to be the individual that we all are. Before I finish every show, I ask my guests a list of 5 questions. I'm just looking for what comes to mind first. So I'm going to shoot. Okay. So first question is, who would you like to say sorry to given the chance?
The mother of my babies, my first wife.
What are you proud of being or doing in your life?
I'm proud of owning my core value at 67 years older, to be able to talk like I'm talking, like, dude, we're all humans, like in the face of all this nonsense, being a star, being a light at the tunnel for others. Like, no kidding. This is all true. Nobody here is really going to argue with what I'm saying. I'm only saying nothing is more powerful than a human connection. It's all I'm really saying. I'm not saying anything else. I get it. There's stuff out there that's powerful. But ultimately, all I'm really a stand for is there's nothing more powerful than a human connection. And I love being that guy. I love making it through 67 years and being that guy.
Yeah, amazing. When did you receive kindness while needing it most and expecting it least?
I would probably say that kindness while needing it most and expecting it least occurs more often with my present wife, my wife Alexandra, than anywhere else. I mean, sometimes I'm such an asshole. Sometimes I'm just such a blockhead. Sometimes I'm so silly or so like misled, and somehow she's
puts up with it.
More than puts up with me, actually is kind and loving in the face of my clumsiness, and I certainly didn't.
Oh, nice. What did your mother or father teach you that you frequently remind yourself of?
Only do things that you can sign your name to afterward.
And finally, what is your superpower?
Oh, I think my superpower is to be able to communicate effectively with people all the way from the crack house to the mansion.
Nice. Dr. Fred, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a real honor, and look forward to talking again.
Yeah, let's do it. Thank you for a great conversation, Dan.
That's it for this episode of Men's Anonymous. Thank you for listening. For more information on the Men's Anonymous podcast, including resources discussed in the show, visit mensanonymous.com. Join us next time as host Daniel Weinberg provides a non-judgmental space for men to voice their innermost feelings and thoughts.